In the last video, we went ahead and we created an object for our object player using a sprite that we had quickly drawn, and then we placed that in a room that we renamed as level 1. So what we want to be able to do now is take our object and be able to start moving it around. So to do that, we're going to need to write some basic scripts. When you write a script, you basically want to start with the object in hand. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take my inspector and just move it over here to the right, and then close it out so it's out of my way. And I'm going to close out my messages so that all I have really is my asset browser. And I probably don't even really need this. But what I want to do is I want to double click on my object player to open it up. And I'll probably close this out now so I have my whole workspace to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write some scripts. And when you write a script, it always starts with an event. The event is basically what tells GameMaker, hey, we need to go ahead and start running the script, because you don't want the scripts, all of them, to be running all the time. Because if I have a script for going up, down, left, and right, I only want that to happen when I press the button. Otherwise, the thing's going to go crazy. So to add an event, I just click on Add Event right here, and you can see these are all the different events that I have. And we'll start going through some more of these later on in some later videos. But for right now, I just want you to focus on these keyboard events. All right. Key down basically means that the script will run as long as the button is held down. Key pressed means that the script will run one time when the button's pressed. And if you're holding the button down after that, the script will not run anymore. It just happens at one time. And then key up waits until the button is pressed and then released. And then at that release, that's when that script will run. With most games, you hold the button down to move, and so that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to do a key down. And as a designer, I'm going to use the arrow keys to move my player around, and then I'll probably use the space bar or something like that to fire. So I'm going to go to key down and then come over here, and we'll start with the right arrow. So I'm going to do key down and right. And you can see now that that has been added into my events. Also, a new window has popped up. And I'm going to slide over here a little bit so that we can, so that we can see a little bit better. What I've got over here on the right-hand side of this window are a lot of buttons. And these buttons, if I drag them out, will give me some inputs that I can start programming with. So essentially what we're going to do is connect these buttons together to form our script, and then GameMaker will generate the code automatically. So we want to move to the right. Well, one thing that you need to know about GameMaker is that when you are in your room, it uses a coordinate plane to figure out where you are. So down here, you see two numbers, right? The first number is your X location, your second number is your Y. And you'll see that when I put it in the upper left-hand corner, it's essentially going to be 0, 0 up here, if I get to the exact corner. As I move to the right, notice that X gets bigger. When I move to the left, X gets smaller. When I move down, Y gets bigger. When I move up, Y gets smaller. So, knowing that, I can use that to my advantage when I'm starting to do my programming. So, I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to see a category called movement. Now, we could do something like this, where we do set the fixed position, set the direction, and we could say move to the right, and then we'd have to tell it which speed we want to go to. So we'd set the speed, maybe 4, something like that. But the problem is, if I do this and I click play, if I press the button, the right button, what's going to happen is my object is going to start moving across the screen, but it's not stopping, and it's just going to go all the way off the screen. So then we'd have to start programming a key up and tell it to stop. Well, you know what? There's a better way of doing this. So here's what we're going to do instead. I'm going to close this out. I'm going to delete this script. And there is something called jump. All right. And basically, it's this jump to a point. And we're going to bring this out. And basically what this means is, as long as the button's being held down, the object will jump to a point in the room. We're going to be working with the x-axis, not the y-axis. So for y, we want it to be 0. We don't want the y to change at all. For x, we're moving to the right. And if you remember, when I move to the right, x gets bigger. So I'm going to put a positive value here. I'm going to choose 4 because that's sort of a pretty decent speed. You're figuring we're going at 60 frames a second, and you're moving at 4 pixels 60 times a second. Okay, so that's essentially what the math is here. But the thing I have to be careful of right now is if I were to hit play and I hit the right button, my object is going to jump to the top corner. It's not going to move anymore. So why is that? Basically, we told it to jump to in the room wherever the x4, y0 coordinate is. What we really wanted it to do was jump 4 places from its current position. That's what the relative box does. So by checking relative, now it's going to jump 4 pixels to the right of where it was before, which means that when I click on play now, I should be able to move to the right, and then when I let go, it stops. But notice that it jumped up to y0 up here. So I need to make sure that I check the relative for both x and y. And if I check the relative for both x and y, now you can see I have full control going to the right. I can't move up and down, I can't move to the left, and I move off the screen, but at least we're starting to move. So let's go ahead and fix some of these things. If I wanted to move to the left, I would go to Add Event, I would do a key down, and then I would go to left. I would again go to Motion, so I'd scroll down here, and I'd grab my jump to a point. My y is going to be 0 because we're moving left. We don't want to move on the y-axis, and I want to make that relative. My x, however, remember, going to the left means that x is going down, so we're going to make this a -4. We're also going to make that relative. And now if I click on play, I'll be able to move right and left. All that's left for right now is moving up and down. So we're going to go to Add Event. We're going to do a key down, and we're going to do down. When we do down, notice that in my recently used, my jump to point now is up here, so I don't have to go scrolling down anymore, so I'm going to bring that out. Since we're moving down, we are no longer worried about moving on the x-axis, so that value is going to be 0 relative so that we stay on the same plane. Jumping down, going down, remember, 0 is up here. As we move down, y got bigger, so it might seem a little bit strange, but we are going to put a positive value in y here. We're also going to make that relative. And then finally, we'll add an event and key down, and this time we're going to do up. And with up, we're going to grab our jump to a point. The x is going to be 0 relative, and the y, again, we're going up, so the y is getting smaller. We're going to do a -4 relative. Now, if I play my game, I should have complete control going in all directions, whichever button I press. And I can even move diagonally if I press the up and the right together or for something like that. So I've got 8-way movement now with my player. And that's pretty much what we were looking for when we started writing these scripts. Now, there's still a whole lot of work to do. One of the problems that we've got is when we play the game, I have the ability to move off the screen. I can move back on, but this is something that's going to break the experience for a lot of players. So we don't want this to happen. What we're going to do is we're going to use a variable to control. It's actually going to take a look at where we are in the room and make sure that we're in the room, and then it's going to stop us from moving outside of the room. With GameMaker, it has variables built in. Now, a variable essentially tells you or it remembers a piece of information. So, for example, score is a variable. The score might be 0, it might be 100. GameMaker is going to remember that. Lives is a variable. You might have 3 lives left, 2 lives left, whatever. GameMaker is going to remember it. Some variables GameMaker has built in. Other variables you are going to have to create yourself. Now, the good news is that GameMaker does have the variable for X and Y built in. So I can do a search in here for the variable button, okay? And notice that right here, we've got some variables, okay? Now, I don't have to declare this variable. It's already built in. So all I have to do is test the variable, which is this. So we want to know if X, right? So actually right now we're in key down. So we want to know if Y. So we're going to bring out this if variable, okay? The variable is going to be Y. This returns the location of where we are on the y-axis. And notice these are all built-in variables that we could use that have y in it, but we just are worried about y. So what is the value of y right now with our object player? Okay, we want to know, so y down here, this is the bottom of the room. okay, we want to know if it's less than this value. Now, in our room, we happen to know that the height of it over here is 1,366. So as long as y is less than that, we know we're inside the room. So if y is 1,000, right, we're sort of, or actually, I'm sorry, the height is 768. That's the width. So as long as the height is less than that, like right now the height is saying it's 714, we're in the room. Now it's saying the height is 811, we're outside the room, okay? So basically, that's what we're looking at right now. What is the location of our object in the room? So we want to know if y, if its value. Now, we might not remember what that room value is, right? We could just say 700 if we wanted to, but we could use another variable here called room underscore height. Notice that it's built in right there, room height. This will return the value of whatever the height of the room is. And we want to know if it is less than the room height. If y is less than the room height, that means we're up in here somewhere, okay? And actually, we don't want to go all the way to the bottom of the screen, so we might take away another maybe 20 pixels from that. So we'll say room height minus 20, all right? Then what we want to do is we want to move this jump to the point over to the side here. So you see how these are connected. If I were to move this back, see how this says empty? That means that there's nothing for it to do after it tests this. So we move this over here to the side. And now what we're saying is, as long as y is less than the room height minus 20 pixels, then you jump to the point. So what should happen when I hit play now is when I go down, oh, you know what? I put this in the wrong spot because this is my key up. My bad. So we made a little mistake here. What we're going to say is instead of room height minus 20 here, we're going to say 20. And we want to know if it's greater than that. So now I go ahead and hit play. And notice that I'll go up. And now I get stuck here. I'm pressing the button. I'm not going up anymore. So we're going to now add this same if-then statement to our other controls. So with down, we're going to double click on that. We're going to bring our if variable. We know that the variable's name is y, so we'll type a y here. And we've already talked about this one, right? So the value is going to be the room underscore height, which is right there, minus 20. And then this is going to be less than that. We now move our jump to the point over here so that this happens only if this is true. With left, we're going to bring out our left, and we're going to do, again, our variable test. So we'll bring out the variable test. The variable this time, however, is going to be x. On the left-hand side, the value of x is 0. So we want to say value, and we'll probably come off to the side of a little bit, so maybe that 20 pixels again. And we want to make sure that it's greater than 0. All right, and then we'll drag this over to the side so that these two conditions are true. If this will happen if this is true. And then finally, we have to do right. So with right, we're going to again scroll up to the top here, recently used, bring out my variable test. Again, our variable is going to be x, okay? And this time, we can use a variable called room underscore width, right there. And same thing as before, minus 20 to give us a little bit of space there. And then we're going to bring this out to the side so that this variable, if it's true, will do that. Now what I should be able to do is hit play, and I can go up and I stop, and I can go to the left and I stop. Now the right's not working, so I've done something wrong there. The down is working. So let's take a look at right and see what we did wrong here. So x, so I kept this as equal. This has to be less. So we want to know if x is less than the room width. And now if we click on play, we can move over to the right, and you can see we can move. And I can get all the way over there, but I still stay on the screen. I go over a little bit because my image is bigger than 20 pixels, so we might have to tweak some of these values, but we'll worry about that in a later video. So for right now, hopefully you're able to get your player to move up, down, left, and right and stay on the screen.